Hi, I'm Sean. A very warm welcome. Let's look at the weekly astrology starting Monday the 23rd. I chat about the two main transits and then look at each sign. So scroll down for your sun, moon and rising sign. The week begins with the Venus-Jupiter trine still active. This should bring a wonderful flow between two super positive planets. I think we should see lots of luck in money, our relationships, and generally all good things. Where the luck will flow will depend on which house is activated. Please see my video on this posted below. Later in the week, Mercury stations retrograde in Pisces. That's Friday. So we all know during Mercury retrograde, don't sign contracts and back up any important information. At a deeper level, the retrograde means a change in communication, planning and decision making. The retrograde should slow the energy down and turns our attention to reviewing things. Maybe we need to make some adjustments to our plans or corrections. When we have a retrograde, it's like the tide is going out, leaving the beach empty so we can see all the debris on the beach. Just an analogy, but a good one, I think. Okay, so let's look at each sign. Hi Aries. The Venus-Jupiter trine links your 3rd and 7th houses, bringing flow between conversations and partnership matters. You may return to a discussion with a partner or collaborator, or complete an agreement that began earlier in the month. Mercury retrograde in your 12th house brings review of private plans or unfinished background tasks. You may reopen an old project, revisit a plan you paused, or correct something you missed. So this week for you is basically about reviewing past conversations and adjusting partnership goals. Enjoy your week. Hi Taurus, the Venus-Jupiter trine links your 2nd and 6th houses, creating movement between money and daily tasks. You may receive delayed payment or reorganize routines to support earnings. Mercury retrograde in your 11th house brings review with groups, communities, or long-term plans. You may update an old team project or reconnect with someone from a group to adjust a shared goal. So this week for you is basically about linking work and income while revisiting group commitments. Hi Gemini, the Venus-Jupiter trine connects your 1st and 5th houses, linking personal aims with projects or creative output. You may complete an idea you started previously, or bring new structure to something you paused. Mercury retrograde in your 10th house brings review of career direction, plans and responsibilities. You may revise a project, correct an error in public work or adjust a timeline. So this week for you is basically about reviewing career steps and refining personal projects. Enjoy your week. Hi Cancer. The Venus-Jupiter trine moves through your 12th and 4th houses, supporting progress in private work and home matters. You may resolve a domestic issue or return to organizing something behind the scenes. Mercury retrograde in the 9th house brings review of travel, studies or legal matters. You may recheck documents or revise travel plans. So this week for you is basically about tying up home matters and reassessing long distance or study plans. Hi Leo. The Venus-Jupiter trine links your 11th and 3rd houses, connecting group plans with communication tasks. You may reconnect with a friend or teammate to finalize a shared idea. Mercury retrograde in your 8th house brings review of shared finances, taxes, or agreements. You may renegotiate a payment, adjust a contract, or revisit financial planning. So this week for you is basically about reconnecting with networks and reassessing shared resources. Wishing you a great week. Hi Virgo. The Venus-Jupiter trine links your 10th and 2nd houses, aligning career tasks with earnings or budgeting. You may update prices, return to a past client, or reorganize your financial structure. Mercury retrograde in the 7th house brings review of partnership dynamics, agreements, or commitments. You may return to an old conversation or revise a partnership decision. So this week for you is basically about balancing career and money while rethinking partnership arrangements. Enjoy your week. Hi Libra. The Venus-Jupiter trine moves through your 9th and 1st houses, linking personal direction with study, publishing, or travel matters. You may resume a course or update documentation for a trip. Mercury retrograde in your 6th house brings review of routines, health systems, and work patterns. You may restructure a schedule or correct a forgotten task. So this week for you is basically about refining daily systems while returning to a bigger plan or project. Wishing you a great week. Hi Scorpio. The Venus-Jupiter trine activates your 8th and 12th houses, linking financial matters with private processes. You may finish a tax task or handle paperwork you set aside. Mercury retrograde in the 5th house brings review of creative work, children-related plans, or dating dynamics. You may edit an old project or revisit a past idea. So this week for you is basically about handling shared matters while reviewing personal or creative plans. Enjoy your week. Hi Sagittarius. The Venus-Jupiter trine links your 7th and 11th houses, connecting partnership matters with group plans. You may revisit a shared goal or reconnect with someone you collaborate with. Mercury retrograde in your 4th house brings review of home and family decisions. You may reorganize your living space or correct an overlooked home task. So this week for you is basically about adjusting shared goals and reviewing home structures. Wishing you a great week. Hi Cap. The Venus-Jupiter trine moves through your 6th and 10th houses, linking work routines with career planning. You may finalize a project or return to outstanding duties. Mercury retrograde in your 3rd house brings review of communication, schedules, and paperwork. You may rewrite documents, correct errors, or revisit logistics. So this week for you is basically about tidying work structures and rechecking communication details. Enjoy your week. Hi Aquarius. The Venus-Jupiter trine activates your 5th and 9th houses, linking creative efforts with study, teaching, or publishing. You may revive a draft, update course material, or finish a project. Mercury retrograde in your 2nd house brings review of finances and spending plans. You may revise your budget or return to unpaid items. So this week for you is basically about reviewing money while resuming a project or learning goal. Wishing you a great week. Hi Pisces. The Venus-Jupiter trine links your 4th and 8th houses, connecting home matters with shared money. You may settle a shared expense or revisit a family agreement. Mercury retrograde in your 1st house brings review of personal choices, plans, and direction. You may rethink a decision or retrace steps on a recent commitment. So this week for you is basically about reassessing personal direction while organizing shared or family matters. Wishing you a great week.